Right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our session on innovation in operational delivery. My name is Angela MacDonald. I am the second permanent secretary for HMRC, currently sporting the Madonna mic, which is a rather interesting. These are interesting things. I'm going to let my panel introduce themselves, and then we are going to have a bit of a chat amongst ourselves for a few minutes, and then we're going to offer you the opportunity to ask us some questions and make this as interactive as we possibly can. So.
Super. Thanks, Angela. I'm Ade Chiffey. I work in CGI, been there 20 years, and I currently look after global technology operations. Good to meet you all.
Hello, this feels really weird.
It is very weird,
If my kids could see me now, they would absolutely wet themselves. So I am Barbara Bennett. I am a Director General in the Department for Work and Pensions, and I'm also the Chief Executive for the Jobs and Career Service, so a real privilege to be here.
And I'm James Mitten. I work with Angela in HMRC, and I cause trouble.
Barbara, you brought fans. There was cheering happening.
I know. Can I just say hello to the summer school crew? So DWP runs a summer school, and the team are here as part of their ongoing personal development. So apologies if you hear some ridiculous whooping.
These aren't just groupies who follow you around. No, okay, fair enough. Right then, so just a few sort of opening words from me. So we're here talking about innovation in delivery, but actually, you know, if we think about the kind of words that are part of our transformation lexicon at the moment, we talk about innovation, we talk about AI, we talk about digital, we talk about cyber. Those are all kind of the current language, the current words around change. When you get to be as old as me, the last time around, we were talking about lean, we were talking about process re-engineering, we were talking about continuous improvement. So all of these are methods and ideas about the way, about how we do change. They can lead to lots of new job titles. They can lead to an endless supply of work for consultancies. But the reality at the heart of all of this stuff is it's all about change. Because at the heart of all things to do with human evolution is change. So if we reflect a little bit about what it is that is different now, so what does the change landscape look like for all organisations, whether you are private or public sector? What would I reflect on as some of the really key sort of features of this time, this environment of change? Well, I'd say that change is faster. So by the time you've even worked out that you are a fan of blockchain was last year's tech. You know, you're not even getting a chance to deliver tech before somebody's found a better way. So the pace, and therefore picking a horse to back becomes actually a lot harder to do. Most change is now tech-enabled. Now, all of the industrial revolutions in prior times have sought to replace human beings with technology, so that's not new. But again, I think the array of technology, the potential for technology, is a bigger and bigger feature of what it is that is the possibility. But for me, actually, no matter what's going on, no matter what the buzzwords are, no matter what the method is, all of this for me comes back to people. It relies on the curiosity of people, the ambitions of people, the ability for people to reach out and see the world through eyes that they are not used to seeing through. Those things, I think, are an absolute, remain absolutely at the heart of it. So for the next 25 minutes or so, me and my lovely colleagues here are going to explore those ideas a little, and as I said, give you the opportunity to ponder what your views are, what questions or observations that you might make, and if we've got anything useful to offer you, we will do our best to answer the questions. So I've got some questions to kind of get us going, but we've decided we're going to just let this conversation roam where might be useful, and hopefully you'll find that interesting. So let's start. So how can you as a leader contribute to that culture of innovation? Because actually, even the word innovation sounds enormous, doesn't it? It sounds like I've got to reimagine my entire place I work for. So how do we empower people? What are the small steps? And, you know, no matter what job you're doing, senior or more junior or more frontline, where do you even start with the latest incarnation for this?
Totally, and everyone plays a part, you know, as you call there, at every level. There isn't one innovation lead and what have you. It needs to be across the organization for it to truly become a mindset. And I'd probably start, Angela, by talking about, you mentioned change there. I think one of the biggest challenges we're seeing, across sector at the minute is that absolute need and desire to remain relevant. But it's also an opportunity as well, I'd say. We think about the speed of change, the speed of advancement in technology, the geopolitical landscape, and think of the work that we all do as well. End users, citizens, expectations are enhancing all of the time as well. So never there been more of a need to be innovating and making that cultural, becoming a mindset. And it's not just for me though about the big things, the once in a generation type advancements. We were talking earlier on, Barbara, weren't we? How do we drive out those everyday continuous improvement changes? Thinking then about the role as a leader, and for the avoidance of any doubt, I don't own the book on being right. I'll have a view based on experience and scars, like we all will. But my take is, as leaders, we need to unlock potential. We need to be thinking about how do we ensure that there is trust in the organization, that our teams know once they understand that there's the right conditions for innovation, they can give things a go, they can try and be first through the wall. But we all know when we're trying things for the first time, one, it can sting a bit, and two, we're going to fail quite a bit at the time. So for me, one of the things that we really need to tap into is around the fear of failure. And trying to, as leaders, to demonstrate, showing some confident vulnerability, that's okay. Whenever we're trying to get somewhere, we're going to take a little bit of pain along the way, but that is okay. Now, I think about structured large organizations, large departments, that isn't always easy. If we think about KPIs that are focused on predictability rather than progress, on outcomes, hierarchy and what have you, that isn't always easy. But the bigger risk is, I really believe, Angela, is we stand still. One of the things that we focus on, and we talk about a lot, is having a lab mentality. If we think about what laboratories do, constantly experimenting, constantly trying new ways. But again, things will be learning points. That failure will be learning points along the way. And for me, it needs to be underpinned with an absolute learning culture. So surrounding ourselves with people who challenge the way we think, challenge the way we behave, so we are constantly looking to eke out those 1%. As the saying goes, isn't it? If you think you're the smartest person in the room, probably right to change rooms, you may be in the wrong one. Thinking about how you're constantly challenging yourself. Needless to say, that's never happened to me. I'll put that out there. But, really pushing ourselves forward. The ingredients I would call out that a leader needs to think about is about really demonstrating the purpose. What's our why? Why are we trying to drive forward on an innovation? And also that human element, the personal contribution that people are making. Again, to the why, what matters to them? What are they trying to achieve? The second thing I'd call out there is around accessible structures. As I mentioned earlier, this isn't from the top type view. This needs to be completely across the whole organization. So there needs to be governance structures at all levels so we can surface innovation, come up with ideas, and then importantly have the empowerment to drive those through. And all of this for me needs to be underpinned by cross-team, cross-border collaboration. If I think about various different initiatives we work on, whether we're working with NSPOC and geospatial, or we're looking at small, innovative type smaller ideas. There's always multiple teams in the mix and involved. I'd probably close by saying there are always barriers, however, multiple barriers that we need to overcome, and the role of the leader needs to be to clear that path. If there's siloed thinking, let's try and find a way to move through it. If there's KPIs that don't quite work, let's see what different type of KPIs can we bring in and give the headroom. My boss, Tara McGee in the UK, when I took the role on I'm doing now, she said, Aid, my role will be to give you as much headroom as I can to be able to stand up. If I think about that for a second, very empowering, and has given me that, that sort of confidence to really drive with my teams, how we look to clear the path and just go for it. But lots happening in this space. It's super exciting, but that need to remain relevant is a constant, and constantly trying to drive through.
I mean, that's really interesting. I think there's something interesting for me about customer expectations, because I think the biggest challenge to customer expectations is this. Okay? So it used to be that in one place you had an expectation from your shops, and in another place you had an expectation for your bank, and in a different place you had an expectation for your government services. Now, because this is all delivered through one mechanism, actually I find, I'm running HMRC, people are judging the provision of digital services for HMRC not by whether or not I look like the same as some other government service. They're judging me against what they see as Amazon or what they're getting through their bank. So customer expectations are twizzling up just because the general tide is rising.
Totally.
And therefore, I think it makes quite an interesting question about, so who are you looking to for your innovation? So how do you look across the sectors, the other places that might not look like organizations you look like, and you think, what have I got to learn from them? But the reality is the citizen is receiving all our services through actually a similar kind of piece. So there's something interesting there. And I'll pick up on my other two colleagues on this one. And then the other one I'm interested in what you said is about the failing fast thing. I'm being told regularly at the minute I need to fail fast. I really don't want to fail at all. I've spent the last 54 years being told that failure is a really terrible idea. So I think there is a really interesting thing about language here. I don't want to fail. Actually, I might like to be 60 or 70% good enough first time.
Yeah.
But I think there's an interesting thing for us about telling people it's okay to fail, and it is, but the language which is part of this current lexicon, I think actually, I think for some it's quite hard to get to, because fail equals bad. But that's what we've been kind of brought up with. So I think there's some evolution to go yet in how this whole thing works in order to get hearts and minds more broadly. So I'm going to pass over to Barbara and see what you want to go with that.
So just on that point, I think one of the things that I've heard in terms of the lexicon that we use is actually succeed fast rather than fail fast. And if you think of it that way, I think organisations are thinking like that. Look, you stand here on a panel talking about innovation and you just think, oh gosh, what on earth can you say? Because actually everybody thinks that they've got their own opinion on innovation, don't they? And everyone, I think, when we talk about it, they see innovation as an input. Hey guys, let's do some innovation today. And we can't think of it like that. It's a bit like culture. Let's do some culture. It's actually innovation, like culture, is an outcome. It's a mindset. And for me, innovation is where a growth mindset meets continuous improvement. Because I think one of the things that we've done is created this lexicon around innovation where it feels cumbersome, it feels expensive, and it feels like other people doing innovation to you. And whenever people cite, and even in the brief we were given examples of innovation, of drones and things like that, and actually that's not our experience of innovation. It's innovation of thought, it's innovation of process, it's innovation of service. It's about the change that you make on an individual basis, the stuff that you do yourself. It's your own internal innovation, your own mindset. And so innovation for me is not stuff. It's not projects. It's not a thing. Today we're going to make something that's going to be innovative. It's got to absolutely run through you, your teams, and your organizations like a stick of rock. So actually, if you're missing a trick, if you've got a person that you go to do innovation, or if somebody's running an innovation workshop, because if that's the case, then actually you're missing a trick on an innovation mindset. And so what is for you your innovation mindset? Is it about actually making time? There is something for me about time to think. I have the privilege of being at IBM for the first 12 years of my career, and one of the things that we did was one Friday every month in my team, we had something called Think Friday. And basically, for one afternoon a month, and that's not the only time that you did it, but actually we set aside time to think differently. What am I doing? Where's my feedback? What's my own personal feedback, my team's feedback, my customers' feedback? And actually, how am I going to do something different? That is emulating the leadership style that actually is encouraging people to say, I'm asking you to do something, but you you are absolutely empowered to spend some time thinking about actually how do you do what you're supposed to do differently. The issue that we have is that innovation has always been associated, especially recently, with digital. So we're going to do some innovation today. Let's do some digital stuff. But we all know that actually, if a process isn't good enough, if you digitize a process, that if that process is rubbish, you've digitized rubbish, right? So surely the innovation has got to come from the process improvement of what you're doing now before you then digitize. And then finally, there's just we, as well as the customer, and I'm really glad that we've talked about it, as operational delivery professionals, we are all about being the voice of the customer into our services. But there is something about diversity of thought that comes from diversity of teams, that comes from you personally and your teams having some grit, having some challenge, having your enfant terrible in the room that's just going to go, no, actually, B, that's rubbish. You know, and so actually, where are you getting your sources of challenge? Because innovation doesn't come from having the same people telling you you're doing the right thing. It comes from going, do you know what? We could just do something differently. So ask yourself, where are you getting your challenge from? Where are you getting your diversity of thought from? And where are you getting the space in order to just think differently about how you are doing things in your day-to-day life? And then, funnily enough, every once in a while, you will get your big innovative ideas, but it's an outcome, not an input.
And I think there is an interesting thing, isn't it, about where you get your stimulation from. So I've been doing this job a long time. And there is a danger when you've been doing a job a long time. You say, I'm an expert. I've been doing this job for XD years. Look at my 20 years service, 30 years service, 40 years service. There's nothing you can teach me. I'm very smart at this. And you are very with depth of expertise. Actually, I think what can be quite interesting and where you see in some markets the disruptors come in is the people who actually have no experience, no background knowledge. They start from scratch and they ask the questions that you've stopped asking. And I'm interested, Barbara, in that curiosity. So I have to schedule time now to make sure I go and talk to different organizations and try to get fresh input. Because you can get quite enclosed in your world and you innovate within this world. You can see some really exciting people are the people who know nothing about your world, and therefore they ask a question you never even thought to ask. So where do you go to stay curious? How are you getting your fresh mental stimulus?
Yeah, and I'm unapologetically boring about the fact that within our teams we have this concept of up and out rather than in and down. Where are you getting your up and out? And so actually be quite practical about it though. So actually we do a once a month, our teams go away and actually we ask organizations to actually show us what they are doing in a different context. So in my world we spend a lot of time thinking about fraud, actually. And there are organizations other than the Department for Work and Pensions that have fraud as a challenge that they're dealing with. So we go and talk to insurance organizations, we talk to banks, etc. And that is a really great opportunity to learn across organizations that we're all trying to solve the same problem, maybe even with the same types of people, and they have got different ways in which they've done it, either through training, through technology, but also it's just an opportunity to, again, it's that time that you have to take in and the permission to teams to go up and out. We often talk in government about the use of consultants, but they do that for us. There is a real opportunity where the market, the private sector, have delivered similar services either for other government departments, and how do we learn? Because sometimes we don't connect ourselves in government with similar experience with other government departments. Obviously not HMRC and DWP, we talk all the time, don't we, James?
We do.
But there is a bit about who is aggregating that knowledge as well for you. So I learn a lot, for example, from international comparators. I'm not the only person that's trying to deliver benefits into a government. Actually, we've been doing some work with the government of Canada, and we went out to see the government in Belgium, in Flanders. They're doing the same things. Why go and have a look at other organizations that are solving the same types of problems and seeing what they're doing? Because there is also something quite comforting about thinking that we're not the only ones trying to solve it. So there is actually some comfort in that. But more importantly, there's a huge amount of inspiration out there. So there's either similar organizations or organizations who can aggregate experiences from lots of different either countries, industries, and give you that overall intelligence. But you've got to pull it in, and you've got to create an environment where actually you do pull that knowledge in, and you're respectful of that. I see a lot of people who are maybe more on the fixed mindset rather than the growth mindset, and they go, well, we tried that in 1984 and it didn't work. We can all think of people who are like that. So try it again. It's all right. And use the opportunity to succeed fast.
Wonderful. Right. Now, whilst I'm going to let James speak, there is something incredibly sharp sticking out of the base of this chair. So I'm going to stand up and ask for a new chair whilst James answers the question.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I've been shuffling because there is something really sharp sticking out of the seat of that chair. It's so that you don't get too comfortable. So, James, keep talking. I've been distracted.
Tell us about innovation.
Tell us about innovation. And could I have a different chair?
So I suppose, I think, just to underline what you've heard, probably three things that I've really seen that can be very helpful. We need, as leaders in operations, to give people permission to play. We need to give them the space to play, and we need to give them the reward to play. And it seems really easy to say it out loud, but how hard is that in real life? So how often do you stand in front of your teams and go, well, go on then. Do it differently, change it, knock yourself out, set it on fire. Let's see what will happen. So long as your teams understand where your organization is trying to go and they're competent in what they do, they're not going to do something stupid, but actually just saying out loud those words, you've got permission to change that target, change that measure, change that way of doing something, change that process is massively empowering. And then I think, as you've heard, do we give people a space to innovate? How many organizations that are held up as beacons of innovation have gone to the effort of actually giving their teams some space in the week or a mechanism to just go away and think and work and play. So, create a sandpit, let a bunch of your team have some space in it, playing, working out and trying stuff. And then finally reward it. I think I shocked our minister the other day. I really enthusiastically said, what I want you to do is stand up and go hurrah when someone fails. And he kind of looked at me a bit blankly, and I said, I probably should explain, but we're not very good at saying when someone is trying to try something new, they're probably going to make 9 mistakes before they hit upon the right outcome. And we need to really encourage that, and we need to catch them and demonstrate they're trying to learn and they're trying to get to the best outcome, and that's a good thing. One of the examples I've seen of that is in child benefit in HMRC. The team were working together. They had all manner of skills. They were trying to go from paper to digital, and they decided they were going to drive to the Sunderland Registry office with a laptop and sit down with Shauna, a customer who just had a baby and was registering, and she was the very first customer in the UK to go through a digital journey, and it worked, and they were so excited. They went back home, and they came back the next day, and a lady had twins, and it fell over. It couldn't cope with twins, but the team actually just went, okay, we need to change the coding. 3 hours later, they'd fixed the coding and it worked for twins. So I think it's just sort of working out that actually, if you try and go in a dark room and innovate, you're not going to do it. But if you give teams a safe space to play in and to learn, it's amazing what magic happens from very small things. Not big things, but really small things.
Wonderful. Now, I hasten to add that the child benefit service is available on the HMRC app, which I'm hoping that every single person in here has. It is one of the top trending apps, and you can't live without it. Please do ensure that if you do nothing from today, you think about downloading the HMRC app to manage your tax affairs and your pensions and your child benefit, etc.,
Are you on
etc.
commission?
No, it's my, I've got a target. Right, okay, so we are going to open the floor. So hopefully we've given you a few bits to think about, but this is now your opportunity to join in the conversation, ask us some questions. There's a gentleman at the front. Wait along, because there'll be a microphone, and we will, as I say, join in this conversation with us. Hello.
Hi.
Are you on?
Yep.
You're on.
I'm Oliver Shalcroft, work in HMRC, one of your troublemakers.
Wonderful. I love a troublemaker.
Fabulous.
And where we're talking about innovation and breaking down silos, I know you're keen on us working together cross-departmentally, you know, try and break down those barriers.
Yeah.
What would you say is, like, a good start on that? Like, where would you want to be looking for us to be starting to work together more? I'm actually working on the regional service offer.
Yeah.
As other government department liaison. So,
Great.
ideal question for me, that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've got lots of things that we have in common, whether that's being employed by the civil service or the citizens that we serve. And so I think that there are some cracking opportunities, and I think the regional environment is absolutely one, where actually we come together not as departments who we are, but as part of the 500,000 civil servants, and all of the, you know, that as being an employee, as well as I think there are some real opportunities for services that the customers use between our departments. And I think Barbara wanted to come in.
Yeah. So practically, it's always good to come together over a problem that you're trying to solve. And I guess some of the missions is about that, but actually some of those big knotty issues where we know that individual departments can't solve themselves. I think I've got a great example. So myself and one of the other Director Generals in the department in HMRC were basically saying we've both got an issue around delivering and designing service for people who are digitally excluded. Okay, and digital exclusion can mean a lot of things, but actually what genuinely does it mean? So if I look at the Estonian government, for example, they have gone, we are absolutely designing our services and they're fully digitized, and if you're digitally excluded, we'll either provide a support network or even better, we'll give you an iPad in order to do your work, right? And so, but we obviously know Estonia is the size of Manchester, so it's not necessarily scalable, but actually it's the mindset again. And so one of the things that we have done to break the barriers down and actually answer the question together across several government departments is to try and quantify together what actually do we mean by, and how many people are genuinely digitally excluded and why, so that we make sure that we don't design our services for those people that are extra vulnerable. If 80% of your services can be accessed by the citizen, what is it that you do in order to be able to answer the question? So that's where we've used innovation together to ask ourselves, how do we genuinely solve the problem to be able to get our services to the digitally excluded? How many do we do that? So it allows us to create services for those that aren't digitally excluded, so that actually we don't hide behind some of the challenges and really get together. So you're absolutely right. I think there is a mindset. Some of the challenges that we have across government, for those of you who are in government, is the fact that actually it comes down to budgets. We're all going through spending reviews, etc. And so we have got to find a way to be able to collaborate despite where the money flows and despite all the priorities that we've got that are competing with our own areas. And it's usually around our thing, our problem, our solution, so that you come together and you come up with that outcome. But we'll never get it resolved. But actually, more than ever, I've been in government for about 3-4 years now. I have seen more cross-departmental collaboration, and also I think it comes from your ministerial teams as well. And actually, we're seeing a lot of ministerial collaboration as well across departments.
So and I think there's a real opportunity for us inside government, but we're not competing with each other. So aid in the private sector, where actually, you know, these are you've got competitors, you've got your your thing that you're fantastic about is your advantage. So who do you collaborate with? And is it possible to do the same? You know, we should collaborate. Should you collaborate?
The answer is 100% yes, and we do. You know, naturally, we need to be very mindful of that competitive landscape, but we will often go into, you know, to new ways of thinking to get together. You know, often with non-for-profit, we will align to certain competitors for the right engagement, and then different relationships can build off the back of that. So when you strip it back, it's actually quite a small industry. So, you know, that sort of camaraderie in the right examples really does happen. But we'd look to bring in our clients. We'd look into bring various different organisations, as Barbara mentioned, to get as many different lenses over a challenge or a particular opportunity as possible. I'm a big believer when we, you know, going back to the competition, I would sooner have a percentage of something rather than 100% of nothing. So, you know, often we will go in and work out, you know, what a share looks like, and then we will compile the minds to get the right outcome.
Wonderful, thank you. Right, more questions. On the couple on the row behind. I can't see you from over there, so you're going to have to wave enormously at the other side if you're...
Oh, hi there.
Hello.
I'm Ed. I work for DWP. My name's Edward Garston. I've recently sent a few ideas up to you guys in Claxton House and whatnot about improvement for the services in DWP. I've also developed a website working as a work coach the last year to help all my customers kind of sort their CVs out, interview prep, all this sort of stuff using AI tools.
Wow.
I'll be interested to have a chat with you guys afterwards about it. But my main question is who's the best person to get in contact? Because I only sent these ideas up probably about 3-4 weeks ago, but who's the best people to get in contact to get some movement or traction or even discuss them in further detail? Because, don't get me wrong, I am talking to some people in the NCS that are interested in one of my ideas, but most of my ideas are about DWP restructuring the operational department. So, yeah, I was just wondering who the best people would be to send them to. That's my first question. And my second question would be, the elephant in the room is, how are you guys, the government, going to deal with this massive transfer of wealth that's going to happen from the adoption of AI? It's going to be unprecedented compared to any other sort of generation before, because, as you probably know, it's all about GDP and productivity, human productivity. And we're about to transfer our productivity to AI. We're at a sweet spot in the moment where we're working with it, and we're questioning with it, working with it to be creative, but pretty soon it's not going to need us to prompt it, let's be honest. There's this big thing about prompt engineering and how this is going to go in the AI industry, but it's kind of a glorified term for someone who asks questions, and very soon it's going to be asked questions better than humans can, so we will be redundant fundamentally. So,
are we heading for Terminator? Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm just asking, what's your fundamental economic plan now that the productivity is dead, capitalism is going to die with AI, communism we know doesn't work?
Wow, these are big
What's
questions.
the difference? So the question is, what are you guys going to do? I mean, have you arranged any sort of taxation of AI? That's going to be the only way you're going to be able to transfer the wealth back to us. What we don't want happening is what happened in the housing market, you know, selling off all the wealth that don't transfer to the rich, creating a bigger gap, obviously. So, but we're looking at an unprecedented transfer of wealth from productivity going to a few large companies that are going to be the masters of AI. Yet no government around the world seems to be talking about how to deal with this transfer of wealth and the fundamental societal problems that will come from it. So I'm just really interested. Have you guys discussed this? What are the plans? Do you have any ideas? I have some I'd like to send your way, but yeah, I'd be interested in what your thoughts are.
Right. Did you want to answer the first question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So
That's a great question. I don't know that I know the answer to it, though.
Yeah.
Blimey, go for it.
Hey, look, first of all, thanks, actually, because these are, the innovation comes from people being able to speak out and ask about these sorts of things. So I'm not trying to sound trite, but actually, we need to make sure that there are voices already always speaking, and absolutely, because we might have blind spots about questions that we're not answering. And I think you'll probably find by how our response to your question is the fact that you might not necessarily get an answer from us today. But it certainly will be inspiration to make sure we think about it. On the DWP side, right, as you know, we've got about 90,000 people in the department, and I'd love to be able to filter up everybody's innovation coming up. So you know that we've got this service improvement leads that we have in every one of our job centres. That is the opportunity to bring it up. And I would say this to anybody though, but just send me a Teams message and we'll sort it. We'll try and at least, because actually somebody did a demo to me from another job centre 2 weeks ago of a similar tool. And I guess what I'm saying is, don't stop giving a go, but also I can't take forward everybody's amazing AI digital tool. Yeah, no, it's fine. I guess the thing is it's for all of us as organisations, across all, public and private sector. Your question is raising with all of us, how do we make sure that we have got the ability to be able to take individual innovations right at the front line all the way through leadership levels and do something with them? And I think that is one of the things that I think we're all grappling with, is how do we make sure that we really celebrate, encourage and harness, and then know which ones are out there, to which ones to prioritise, and therefore which ones to fund. Yeah. So I'll bring you in a minute, James. But so I would ask everybody, please do your tools. Please do absolutely invest time and energy in them. Please don't be despondent if every single one can't be brought forward, but please keep the energy and the appetite going, and we'll find a way. Because actually one of the things that I need to do is absolutely create a vehicle within my department and obviously other departments and other organisations to filter up innovations like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's incredibly important about your second question is, if we think about kind of the massive societal disruption that occurred every time there was effectively an industrial revolution. This is not the first time the kind of seismic change that you're talking about has happened. The question, I think, at this one is how much of it is foreknowable, how much of this is controllable. And we could offline, I think we could spend a whole afternoon kind of discussing and exploring it. And I think that it's the kind of disruption that you're talking about, and who knows how it will manifest itself. I think the one thing that is really certain about this next phase of technology is that there is going to be a massive disruption. And as I said, how, what, and definitely in terms of how does the government face into it, then those are questions for ministers and the government, as opposed to us as officials, I think. But I should imagine even in the private sector, you're also thinking it. So the scale of the potential of what technology could do to the kind of fundamentals of society on which we stand, I think you raise an excellent question, because I'm not sure we know the answer to that. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to it, but I don't know, James, if you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I was going to say sort of three things touching on some of your questions. I think it's interesting, in HMRC, we used to collect taxes on horseback in the villages. So if you think about...
We've got rid of the horses now.
As Angela says, you do have to sort of grapple with those very significant logistical changes when the printing press was invented. So for sure, we're going to have to think differently about the way we do things. And we can already see Web3 and blockchain as potentially radically causing upheaval in the tax system. I think the sort of linked with that, just coming back to what you were saying about raising an issue, some of us had the privilege of hearing Maersk come and tell their transformation story to us a couple of years ago. And one of the things that really struck me was they wanted to be innovative. They were making a massive loss, and they were really struggling to break out of a very conservative culture. They were based in kind of Europe with a sort of, if I was an exec, I had to have belts that matched the color of my shoes. I had to wear a shirt and tie, all of that kind of stuff. And they struggled with operating models and clever changes. And a lady from one of the universities in the US came over and gave them a 4-hour lecture, which radically changed everything. And they came up with this thing called iconic changes. And they sent their executives to the balcony brief in the summer in shorts and T-shirt. And it blew the mind of the whole organization, because here was a really conservative organization, and suddenly the leaders of the organization were signaling the intent of a change. But what it did was it sparked a sort of revolution. It was you've got permission to just in your area do the things that you know are the right things to get us in that direction with this changing culture. And they now point back to about 15 changes across the organization, some which were planned and some which were not planned, that between them just became pivotal to that snowball effect. And so I would encourage you. My worry sometimes is we go, where's the email I need to send for my idea? What can you do locally with with like-minded people, with your networks? How could you just go, do you know what, I'm going to do that? How far could we push trust and accountability into the organization and let more of our colleagues feel like they can just get on and change the world? In child benefit, we had 19 years of a really poor process for international claims. It took 6 months to get your money if you were coming from a broken, war-torn country and you were desperate for your money. We got them into a room and we said, we're going to create this new cool operating model. But in the meantime, while we get the technology in, is there anything we could do? In 2 weeks, they went through the existing process and they got it down from 6 months to 29 minutes with no technology change whatsoever, just by getting some of the right people in the room who are passionate about solving it together. And I just wonder how much of that is within our gift that we just missed today, because we're waiting for the super wonderful, technology answer that is coming, but probably not there yet.
It's still all about the humans, isn't it? Absolutely right. There's a lady here, and then there's a gentleman at the back.
Hi, my name is Anya Williams, and I'm the Deputy Governor of the Turks and Caicos Islands, which is a British overseas territory.
Hello.
The question I have is that I know the Prime Minister has given his vision, and many of the ministries and departments have worked on their strategy, but is there one overarching document or strategic plan that covers the entire UK government that sets out the goals and priorities for every ministry, what you're working towards, the plan, and how you intend to get there? Because I believe we had a session earlier about working in silos, and that's one of the challenges I believe that government has, that different ministries and departments will have their plans, they will have their goals, but everyone is working independently. And then it's hard to try to tie it all into one strategic document that sets those clear timelines. So does the UK government have that sort of a strategic framework? And if it does have one, where can it be located so that persons from outside of the main government can actually have access to it?
Great question. So I think that the joining up part is so there are two levels of joining up, I think, in the way government runs. One is about the government agenda from a policy perspective, and then the second is the sort of officials' practical running parts, which are not political. They're about excellent running of services and the like. And I think in the first of those, the Prime Minister has clearly set out the missions, so the key areas where he and his government wish to prioritise. There are inevitably many more things that government does than the priorities that are in the missions, but the Prime Minister has clearly laid those out, and those are on gov.uk, and you can see what the Prime Minister is driving at. At the kind of interdepartmental cooperation level, it is right that historically you have your accounting officer, the budget gets allocated, the department decides its plan, sets off on its plan, and if you're lucky, the plans might intersect in some kind of a way. It kind of fits a little bit to what you were saying. What we are working on at the moment is to look at where is it that we should be, because we are hitting the same citizen, collaborating, or we're using the same technology. We should be building once. We should be thinking about the citizen from one end to the other, even if that citizen passes through several departments. So where that will get published, although it's not published yet, is there'll be operational plans for each department. We publish our plans, and therefore in there we'll be able to see where we've decided we want to cooperate. There's a big push to cooperate around technology and AI, and actually DCIT, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, it is their job to be the sort of overseeing department, if you like, to make sure that all of the bits are joined together. So if the extent to which you wanted to see it right now, DCIT is the place to go. Thank you ever so much. Now, there was a gentleman back there, and then I'm fairly sure there was another gentleman over there, and there's a lady over there. So hello.
Hi, my name is Lee from DWP in Essex.
Yay!
My question is twofold. First of all, to Adrian. in a couple of months' time, I'm going to be talking to 240 businesses, SMEs and national companies about what the public sector can do for private sector in terms of encouraging inclusive employment. What would be the one thing that they would want to hear from the public sector that would encourage them to be more inclusive as employers? And then more broadly to the panel, what's the one piece of innovation you can think of that would be good to include within that presentation? Thank you.
Great question.
Really good question.
Yeah. Employ people, Ade.
Yeah, no. If it was one thing, it would be around, giving us the why. We talked about that earlier. If we're coming in to get that view, get that understanding across I think you mentioned 240 organisations. What is that end game? What are you absolutely looking to achieve? So we can come on that journey and then be part of that. And then what you'll get the two. You'll get the private sector, public sector coming together with that same end goal. So I appreciate that's a broad answer, but you're only allowing me one. So that would be my take.
I mean, I think Barbara.
Bring us on the mission.
Yeah, I mean, picking up on your day job, employers want good quality, skilled people to help them run their businesses. It would seem.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got a supply and demand issue. We have got a government that wants to get to 80% employment, and also we know that we have got people who are out of work, long-term limiting life conditions, and also we know that we want to be able to support young people, etc. And you could get everybody ready and job ready, but if there isn't the demand for those jobs and the structure of those roles that allows for the flexibility for them to be attractive for different types of customers, then we're never going to make the target. So never more, and it's brilliant that you're talking to those organisations, because that is literally my day job, is actually trying to work with all organisations to use the DWP when it comes to thinking about how to fill your jobs. And one of the issues that we always come up against and the barriers is how do those jobs, how do we tailor them in order for them to be attractive for the types of customers that the DWP is trying to serve. So there is definitely about flexibility of contracts. There's diversity of thoughts. I was talking to an old colleague earlier, I don't know if he's in the room here, he's got a son who's got Down syndrome, and he's absolutely job ready, definitely, really independent, incredibly capable, but still trying to get himself into work. And I still think this is a great opportunity where the public and the private sector can come together to solve some systemic issues that we have across the country, which is that supply and demand. I think there's also a local element to that as well, is how do we make sure that we get the right people in the right areas where there are skills gaps as well, so that we know that we've got building jobs and construction jobs in certain areas. We know that we've got sustainability jobs in certain areas. We know we've got green jobs, and we know that also there are some issues, in terms of getting people into, especially post-Brexit, some kind of major job families out there, like supporting farming, like adult social care, etc. So we're doing a lot of work, and this is where technology is great, to be able to see where is the demand for skills, what is the demand for skills, and what is the supply, and trying to do that matching. So please continue to have that conversation, and if you're plugging your app, I'm plugging my job centres. Right,
we're going to squeeze one more in, and this gentleman's been terribly patient.
Hi, I'm Michael Wilton from HMRC.
Hello.
So I'm a strategy lead in compliance, but I've previously worked in policy. In policy, you have that space to innovate. You have that time, that thinking time. In compliance, generally speaking, you don't, because you've got that tension between wanting to innovate and actually having to do that compliance work, demand-led most of it. How do we encourage our frontline compliance teams, in particular in HMRC, it might be different for DWP, but the same principle applies. How do we encourage our teams to have that time for that short-term pain in order to make that long-term gain down the line? So we'll take that hit in compliance, we'll spend that time because we'll get it back and more in the future. How do we encourage that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm going to let James answer it.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think in answering questions like that, there is no silver bullet. some of us went to see Octopus the other day, and it was really fascinating to see how the development of their product called Kraken, which they use for managing energy, has enabled them to work very differently in compliance and in the frontline customer service centres. So they have a platform that is flexible enough to allow them to make 150 changes a day, and it's been built in a very helpful way so that they can have people almost in the frontline teams making changes to the customer journey. Their contact centre deals with customers A to C in this team and from D to F in this team. So you're able to actually own the end-to-end experience of a customer completely yourself. And when you start to get into models like that, imagine in a compliance world where you can just look after a particular small group within a small team, and you've got the space to make all the choices about how you manage that work and how you create time to innovate. So I think it's upon all of us to reimagine how we do compliance and to think completely differently to how we thought before, and to be really pokey of our IT colleagues in therefore saying, and therefore this is what I need the technology to enable me to do, and this is what I need to do in my mindset and my team's mindset and our processes. And do you know what? We're not going to do compliance the way we've done it for the last 50 years. We're going to do it like this instead. And so I think there's those bigger things, and then just looking at the day-to-day stuff. How can you, within your local teams, get agreement and trust to start to carve out some of the space that you have in a week that might be used on meetings to instead do something more specifically about solving shared problems? And we don't make enough of regional centres, so why not get like-minded regional people together to try and solve regional problems? So I think there's some of my ideas.
Yeah, plenty of opportunities. Now we are now at naught, so I know we could keep talking, but I'm going to need to bring us to a close. So I'm hoping that you have found the last hour useful in some way. I think the one thing that I would reflect on is I think change is massively exciting. Yep. You know, there is so much opportunity, and actually what technology offers us these days is the opportunity to put the ability to do change into all our hands, as opposed to it happening in some place back there with some team that, you know, it's their job to do change. And actually, you know, that kind of locally developed stuff, it's easier to do that practically than it ever has been. And what is it that we all need to stay focused on? Well, I think the biggest thing I hope you would take away from the conversation today is to stay curious. How are you stretching your learning? Who is opening your mind to whether your experience is 2 years, 22 years, 42 years? Where are you getting your new inspiration from? Because actually what is happening is the ideas of the citizen are shifting. The opportunities for how we solve the problems of the citizen are also shifting. So what's your learning? Where are you? If you're privileged enough to go to DWP summer school, you know, or whatever else it is that you're doing, where are you getting that stimulation from? And finally, change is a team sport. So it might not be something that right now you are able to do on your day job, but hopefully you're part of a team where somebody else is looking at the process that you're working on. Somebody else has got the same problem that you're trying to solve. And my second shameless plug is for the operational delivery profession. Karen is here. Because actually the operational delivery profession in government works really hard to put people together to share learning. And I think if you're in other professions, that's also true. So government is working really hard to try to ensure that we can learn from each other. Because as I say, change doesn't know about boundaries, and customers don't care about the split of how government departments are put together. They want great services delivered to allow them to live their lives well. And whether, or even in the private sector, people want to buy great services to live their lives well. Yep. And those are the things that we have in common. So thank you so much for your time and attention this afternoon. It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you to my fantastic panel members. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day today. Thank you.
Thank you all.